Hey, Dan,
Hey there.
stop looking at your phone. We're doing a podcast.
I am playing. I'm not actually playing games on my phone. You know what I'm doing on my phone?
You're looking up a food
I'm
heist.
looking up a food heist.
I'm waiting in breathless anticipation. The
Oh, okay.
I'm waiting with breathless anticipation for how the voting's going to break down for what's going on with our brackets, but we
Yeah.
don't know anything new
we
now.
have nothing new to report at this point.
Nope, it hasn't.
Which is probably very frustrating for our listeners because by the time this episode airs, they will know exactly what's going on.
Yes, they will,
But
because
at
I'll
this
probably
moment of
have
recording,
given a weekly
we
update
have
saying,
nothing. No, but cast your mind back into the distant past of 2018.
What a fun year. Hollywood was booming and there were no problems at all with any of the streaming services or film industry.
It's just a wonderful time.
Nobody was sick with any giant pandemics.
Can you tell me where you were the night of August 15th, 2015 or 2018? And were you, by chance, in Georgia?
Well, I actually can't tell you that. It's classified.
I see.
I might have been with the Food Heist Bureau of Crimes and Investigations. I might not have been, but
well, so somebody actually this was earlier than that. The article was August 15th. This was sometime between July 25th and August 1st. So those 6 days, somebody stole a trailer full of $100,000 worth of ramen noodles.
So we're talking like $100,000 worth of ramen noodles, you said? So we're talking like packages of ramen noodles, like 7 million packages to get to that kind of money?
Yes.
I mean, a pack of ramen noodles was worth like a penny.
Well,
it's worth like 10 cents.
Well, I mean, they might be talking about retail value, right?
Yes.
And then if it's top ramen, those are like 15 cents a package.
Yep.
But if it's like the good Shin Ramyun, like Korean stuff, that might be $3 or $4 a package.
Ramyun, is that how you? If you make fun of my Spanish pronunciations, can I make fun of your Korean pronunciations?
Absolutely can, because I have a horrible Korean pronunciation. But yeah, somebody took off with an entire trailer full of ramen noodles.
Well. Do we know anything about them?
No, we know nothing. They were sitting outside of a Chevron gas station in Fayetteville, Georgia. It's a 53-foot trailer just packed to the brim with ramen noodles.
So I've got a ramen noodle story.
Okay.
I've got several, but
I'm excited to hear
This is
it.
a fun one. So living in Korea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're missionaries, and one of the principles of the church is you should have some food storage in case of a disaster, right? Just emergency preparedness is a thing that is important and whatnot. And so the mission president, who's in charge of all these missionaries, an older gentleman who's like, trying to keep all of these 20-something, teen-somethings in line, says, all right, check your food storage. It's time to do an assessment of what you have. And most of them, what we would have for our food storage was MREs.
Okay.
MREs. If you're familiar with MREs?
I am.
So Korea, there's Army surplus stores, U.S. Army surplus stores. I don't know if they're legal or not. Scar might be able to inform us about that. But they,
I assume they are.
I think that they were. There were ones that were not so, they were shady, but they're also like legal ones where it's like, hey, our MREs, these are for the soldiers to eat. They have a shelf life. We sell them when they've got a few years left so that, we can then replace them and then people will buy them. Those make for pretty good food storage, right?
Well,
they're shelf stable. The
prevalence of Spam in Korean food and in Hawaiian food is directly because you get it cheap off the Army bases.
Yep.
So
we went this place to check our food storage. And there was a note from the missionaries who'd lived there before that said, we ate the MREs. They're too good. We've replaced them with ramen. And so we wrote to our mission president and said, well, we have a big thing of ramen that's expired for our food storage. And he's like, ramen? Ramen has the nutritional value of potato chips. Who would think that this is good? You even have to boil it with a lot of water. It's terrible food storage. So we got chewed out, not that chewed out, but like because the missionaries before us liked MREs a little too much and had eaten all of the MREs. We've joked about that for months because we're like, who likes MREs? Nobody in the military seems to like them, but Scar says there's a few that are less bad than others.
That are less terrible than others. We used to eat MREs all the time in Scouts when we would go on big backpacking trips.
Oh, yeah?
But I can't remember which ones we liked and which ones we didn't.
I had a couple the next time we did food storage rotation. That one there was. And so they're like, go eat those, and here's some replacements. And I thought they were all awful. I did not like a single one of them, particularly because they've got like 5,000 calories in one of these things. Exaggerating a little bit. It's like a meal that's 3,000 calories.
Yeah, it's designed to like keep you going the whole day of hard marching or whatever.
And so it's like, if I'm going to eat 3,000 calories in one meal, I want milkshakes, right? I want, I want something good. I do not want, I don't want spaghetti that you slurp out of a straw.
So, on the ramen subject, this is such a nerd thing to bring up. There is a League of Legends pro player. I want to say Guma Yusi. That means nothing to you. But
there's a few that are named after my characters in my books.
Yeah. I
always get notes that say, hey, Kaladin did really well at League of Legends. I'm like, what? Yeah.
So, Guma Yusi, he is a Korean player.
Okay.
And he was talking in an interview recently because, there's like 5 people on a team and they play very specific positions. And he was talking about one of the positions, which is called ADC. And he said, they're like the egg on ramen. Like, the rest of the team is the ramen. And you don't need an egg in order to eat ramen. But if you have an egg, it's good. And he was just using this as a comparison of, if your team sucks, then your team's going to suck even if you put an egg in it. But if your team's good, the ramen with an egg in it is better than the ramen without.
It's a great metaphor.
Yeah, it's a very good metaphor.
Yeah. I understand that position really well from him having explained that. So, the first time I had someone in Korea make ramen for me, ramyeon, I was shocked when they dumped hot dogs in it.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, this is how you make ramen. Cut up some hot dogs, put them in. I'm like, hot dogs? They're like, yeah. All right. Hot dogs in the ramen and an egg. But Korea, they like to crack the egg and stir it to make it like egg drop soup in your ramen, which I don't know if that's the thing that they do in Japan or whatnot. Like, when you're making it home, maybe it's the difference between store-bought and home-bought. But I never got ramen in a store when I was in Korea. There's always someone made it at home.
I have learned how to cook a lot of Korean food, and I was learning how to do various different jigaes.
Okay.
And then someone said, you need to try bude jjigae.
Okay.
Which is army base stew. And it's like a regular old jjigae, except you throw in hot dogs and Spam and like Velveeta cheese and all this weird stuff.
The Velveeta cheese in the soup, I only had it once. It was so weird to see them doing that.
It's weird, but it's good. I can kind of see where they're coming from.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
I didn't really like the tuna dumped in. That they also did just like a can of tuna, dump it in.
Tuna I didn't dig, but the flavor combination of Spam and kimchi totally works.
It does.
That I love.
They do like Spam over there, much like in Hawaii. Probably for the reason that you talked about. But yeah, the hot dog thing, it kind of threw me for a loop. But yeah,
that's awesome.
It was tasty. It's good. They had, they were using high quality hot dogs. So
well, that's good. Excellent.
Have we talked about talked about linguistic jokes? Have we talked about what happened? So,
okay.
Were any pranks played on you when you were in Mexico about the language?
Not really.
Okay.
There is one weird language-based thing that I'm very excited to tell you.
Okay.
But let's hear your story first.
So, in English, they write on bread often milk bread. If you go to the store, it'll be milk bread, right?
Okay.
And milk bread is to distinguish it from potato bread or from like flat bread, even though, the milk bread is American bread, right? Like white bread. And it'll say in English, usually, milk bread. And so one of the pranks that they would do, this was done to me when you're new in the country, the other missionaries want to get you, is they'll be like, we need some bread. They call it milk bread here. That's uyubong. Usually you just shorten that to yubong. Go ask at the front if they have any yubong. Ask if they've got two loaves. It's also short for breast. And so the joke is to get you up there and say, do you have 2 breasts? To the person running the cashier thing. And they always laugh because it's an American asking it. They're like, oh, milk bread over there. But they get a real kick out of it. It's such a missionary thing to do that.
Yeah. So here's the 2 classic Spanish ones.
Yep.
Okay.
And I don't know if I have that backwards. It might be yubong. Uyubong is breast and yubong is the bread. I might have it backwards, but anyway.
Yeah. I don't know.
Someone out there speaks Korean better than me these days. Is like, no, Sanderson, you got it wrong.
Got it wrong.
Yeah.
So Spanish has a ton of cognates with English because English has a lot of Latin roots in its words. And there's one that does not cognate. For the most part, you can kind of just add the right verb endings to the end of something.
Embarazado?
Embarazado, yeah. And so that'll happen a lot. Sister Missionary who got up and said, Estoy muy embarazada, y es la culpa del obispo.
Yes. I'm very embarrassed. It's the bishop's fault.
Yeah, I'm very pregnant is what it actually means in Spanish.
Emily has told me that one.
Yeah, that's a classic.
And of course, once she told it to me, now I constantly joke about getting it wrong. I also had a friend who was from Bolivia who would teach me Spanish things. To be embarrassing, and he'd be like, "All right." He'd say, normally you will say, in America you'll be like, "Hey, my girlfriend's hot." That's caliente in Spanish. Sorry for my pronunciation. He's like, and a slang word for your wife is mujer. So go tell your wife that mis mujer está caliente or whatever. And apparently that's a way to say something that's very embarrassing. Also, even though it means the right stuff.
Caliente, when applied to a person, means horny rather than hot.
So. So he taught me that one.
Yeah.
Just specifically to get a rise out of my wife.
My mission president grew up in northern Mexico. Yep. And then when he was a young lad, he served his mission in southern Mexico. And Mexico, the slang and the vocabulary differs city by city, let alone state by state.
Yeah.
And so he got up in church and he told them, he was, talking about family duties or whatever. And he said, husbands, help your wives to wash the dishes. And the word for dishes in northern Mexico is trastes. Trastes in southern Mexico means butt. So he told the husbands to help their wives wash their butts.
Well,
it's very helpful.
Very helpful. Yeah.
Here's my favorite one, though.
Okay.
This is the one that came up all the time, and at least in my case, it was never on purpose.
Okay.
But I do not doubt that there were elders that did this on purpose. In English, we don't have any vulgar rhythms.
Right.
But in Mexico, they do. The rhythm of shave and a haircut, which to this day, I find vulgar after having lived there for so long. So I'm not going to make that rhythm now.
Okay.
But the rhythm of shave and a haircut is incredibly offensive because it's part of a very dirty joke.
Okay. And
so how does every single gringo elder knock on a door the first time they knock on a door?
Yep, we've seen Roger Rabbit.
Yeah. I can't imagine what that scene plays like in Mexico. So yeah, this would happen every single time a new American showed up in the mission, and we'd go out tracting and we'd knock on somebody's door and they'd knock, shave, and a haircut, and we were like, oh crap, I forgot to warn you, run. And like, we're not even going to deal with this family. We'll come back later and hope they didn't know that we're the ones that knocked a dirty joke on their door. But yeah.
So my favorite missionary story, goofy missionary story, right?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of non-goofy missionary stories, but in Korea, men are all in the military. It's basically, you have to. It's mandatory military service. At least when I was there, it might have changed in the years.
It still is.
Still is.
Because that heat hits league players all the time. It hits K-pop stars all the time.
And it's reserve. You're all in the reserves for a certain number of years, which means that whatever you're doing, missionary, student, whatever, you need to go do your reserve duty, right? Which is go for a weekend, practice your skills, and then come back. So this is not a normal thing in missionary life. You don't just go off on your own. If you know anything about this, part of just to keep, it's a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds, right? So part of the rule is you're always with someone else. You're never going off on your own. We represent the church in a way. We don't want people off doing stupid things. If there's two people, they're less likely, hopefully, to do something stupid. So you're never off on your own. And we had missionaries who were Korean who went off and did their thing. It was very natural, very normal. But the first time you get there, you're like, what? They just leave and are not a missionary for 3 days and they come back? Yeah, that's how it is in Korea. And we had a new missionary come to join us, fresh off the plane, so to speak. And one of the missionaries in our little group had been off doing training, and we came up with this idea, which was a very interesting idea. This is I guess proof that even when you're together, you sometimes come up with some things. We said to the missionary, we're like, when you come back, just don't tell him that you're a missionary. Just don't let him know. And we were teaching English class. It's a service we often did in Korea. It's just like you come, do some conversations. There was no, proselyting as part of it, though. If you wanted to hang out afterward and hear about the church, you could. If you wanted to leave, totally fine. And so we do the English class, and he shows up back at English class, and there's the brand new missionary. This is his first day. And, our friend comes up, and he's like, oh, this is really interesting. What's it like to be a missionary? And talks to him a little bit and finds out, about what it's like to be a missionary. He's like, wow, I'd like to be a missionary someday. And the rest of us are like, just come with us. That's how you become one. And he came with us home to the thing. And the new missionary is just like, what? You can't just pick up a guy and be like, yeah, you're a missionary with us now. And he came in and he started getting ready for bed, all the things and stuff like this. And this new missionary is just panicking about this. It's the best prank we ever played. He finally picked it up when we said, evening prayers, and the guy said the prayer. Just no one called him. He just did it. Yeah. And then they're like, wait. You know how to wait, and that's when. So
delightful.
Yeah, that was a good moment. I enjoyed that one.
Cool.
My first day in the country, they made me eat a burning squid, and a literally on fire squid.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You don't blow it out before you put it in your mouth?
So what happened is I get picked up by two missionaries. One's Korean, one's American, and they bring me back. And the Korean missionary liked to do this one to new missionaries. He did not speak English very well, and he the other missionary was training me to be a missionary. He was speaking for the other missionary. We got home, and he said, "Oh, this." He really likes you. He wants to give you a gift. And he got out a squid. It's dried squid jerky, but it's in the shape of a squid. It's an actual squid that they sliced out the guts, hung it up, dried it. He takes one. And he's like, this is for you. Oh, wait. And they have gas burners. He turns on the burner. He's like, they're better warm. And he goes on this and he gets it on fire. And then he hands it, like he blows it out and hands it to me smoldering. And the American's like, yeah, you got to eat that or you'll offend his honor. And then, so they got to watch me eating a burning squid tentacle, barely keeping in the laughter as I choked it down. So
awesome.
It's not actually that bad. I don't like fish, but squid jerky is totally
fine. Squid was
fine.
okay, huh?
Yeah.
We would do that with new gringos all the time.
Yeah.
Because, in Mexico, you've got a tortilla in one hand, you got a jalapeno in the other, and you're just kind of shoveling food in with whichever one works best. And so this kid showed up, and he didn't, he hadn't really eaten anything before. It was this was at the Christmas party, was like his first day in the mission. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to get him to eat the jalapenos. And we weren't even really tricking him, right? We were just saying, this is good. We were showing him, you take a bite off the end. And he, in a desire to impress us, ate the entire jalapeno in one bite.
Okay.
And then spent the next 3 hours in the bathroom, like running cold water on his face to try to cool down.
Once I would have not known what that felt like. But I have now eaten the hottest peppers that Hot Ones could provide to us, the hottest hot sauce, and so I do have an understanding of what that experience would be like.
What that might be like.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear my favorite mission story?
Yeah.
That's not what we were intending to talk about today.
We'll get to our talk.
But that's what it's turned into.
It's turned into this. We're talking about.
Yeah. We have, of course, the classic Dear John letter.
Yes.
Right? Where missionary goes out, leaves a girlfriend home, and then while he's serving his mission, the girl's like, I met somebody else. Whatever. So there was one of the zones I lived in. It was in this little town in Chihuahua called Delicias, and it was awesome. And the zone included missionaries from many cities around it. So when we had our monthly zone meeting, they would all come together and stay in my house because I was the zone leader. And we got the pouch mail. And so we handed out mail to everyone, and we're all sitting around like at night.
Pouch mail is everyone would mail to your mission, like the office.
Yeah, they mail to the mission president, to the mission office, and then they would distribute it out to people.
Makes it easier because missionaries are sometimes moving around a lot, but also some mail services are more reliable than others, and so they can find ways to,
Yeah. So I used normal mail sometimes, I used pouch mail sometimes, it all depends. So anyway, this guy, he's from Mexico City, and he was there, and he got a letter from his girlfriend. And he reads us. He's like, this is the best letter I've ever gotten. And he reads us the full page out loud. And it's like, I love you so much. I have all the dreams of, spending our lives together and then eternity and all these other things. And just goes on and on and on. And then turn the page. But that is not what our Father in heaven has planned for us. I met somebody else. I'm sorry, I'm getting married. And he just watching that page turn and his heart just fall through the floor was one of the funniest things we'd ever seen. I mean, he was absolutely broken up about it, and we did our best to comfort him. But also, that was a phenomenal prank. I don't think she intended it as a prank. I think she was trying to soften the blow.
Turn page reveal.
But with the turn page,
that's amazing.
That
is a
so
very,
great.
very good one.
And so that's still a phrase that I use sometimes is, but that is not what our Father in heaven has planned for us.
I got another good one.
Okay.
This is a slightly different tactic. We, as missionaries, it's not really like we have a reputation for knocking on a lot of doors. We didn't do that a ton in Korea. It's not really that effective. It tends to be like, it's the sort of thing that was more common back in the 50s and 60s that, everyone was door to door. People were used to it. Nowadays, you knock on someone's door, they don't want to see you, right? And that transition was happening while I was in Korea. We were doing less and less of that. We were doing more things like, set up a stand. Hey, come talk to us if you want to find out, things like that. But we did occasionally still go door to door. And I remember going door to door and, normally people aren't interested. totally fine, right? You're busy. Two yo-yos knock on your door saying, "Hey, do you want to hear about Jesus?" It's not always the right time.
Yeah.
So you get used to quite a lot of people saying, "No, thank you," or one of my favorites in Korean, they would call out, "Nobody's home," and we'd be like, "Who are we talking to?" "Oh, nobody's home." That was just slang for not right now, but they'd actually say nobody's home. But one very snowy, very cold day, we knocked on this door, and an elderly woman opens the door and looks at us, and we said, "Hey, we're missionaries. We're wanting to teach people. Would you be interested?" And she's like, "Come on in," right in the door. And we're like, "Wow, this happens very rarely that they're like, great." And she brings us in, she sits us down, she's like, "Let me get you guys some tea." So I got my favorite citron tea. She brought that to me. And, my companion, she sits down and she's like, "All right, tell me." And we're like, "Well, we want to tell you about Jesus Christ." She's like, "He was one of the best Buddhists." And it was like the best conversation where we'd like, Jesus Christ did this. She's like, "He was such a good Buddha." The whole conversation was just start telling us how great a Buddha Jesus was. And at the end, we're like, that was the best meeting we've had in a long time.
Yeah.
Jesus was a pretty good Buddha, huh? She's like, "Yes, he was." And we got our tea, and then we went on our way. And I still remember that nice old lady who, saw the two missionaries and brought them in and gave them tea, let them talk about Jesus and
the great Buddha.
The great Buddha Jesus. And then on we went, warm and feeling great. So wherever
That's awesome.
that old lady is, I'm sure she was like in her 70s or 80s, so she's probably passed on now. Then,
there you go.
Thank you very much.
That is how a lot of my mission was.
Yeah.
Because, Mexico is a predominantly Christian country.
Yep.
It's very Catholic in the south. Up where I lived in the north, it was very kind of born again Christian. And so, people would love to talk about Jesus. They didn't want to hear necessarily my version of Jesus, but they would love to sit and let's talk all about him. And let's talk about the saints too. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm not as interested in that conversation. But yeah.
My brother Jordo?
Yes.
Jordo went to Japan. In Japan and Korea, finding American foods that are comfort foods is a little difficult.
Yeah.
You normally can't. He mentioned, this is just Jordo, that he missed American breakfast cereals in a letter home once. And his favorite breakfast cereal at the time was Lucky Charms.
I was going to guess Frankenberry, so I was very close.
Very close. Lucky Charms. He loved Lucky Charms. He liked the marshmallows, right? So Jeremy, my cousin, and I came up with a plan. And we bought a big thing of Lucky Charms, and then we took all the marshmallows out. It was a painstaking process to get all the marshmallows out. And we then took a picture of ourselves eating bowls of just the marshmallows, grinning, and we put them in the bottom of the bag with all the non-marshmallows, and we resealed it, and we spent $20 to send this to Jordo in Japan. And one of the great things, like when you're a missionary, when you get a package, it's like,
oh yeah,
like amazing.
I'm so excited to have this thing
is gonna have cookies or
food
something
from home.
Yeah, it's gonna have a box of mac and cheese. It's gonna have Lucky Charms, and this was a big package because Lucky Charms box. And he's like, Lucky Charms. He later said, "I've gathered my companions around. We're gonna have Lucky Charms." And he opened it and poured it, and no marshmallows. And then out comes the picture of Jeremy and I eating his marshmallows. I don't know if he's forgiven me to this day.
That's delightful.
Yep.
Yeah. I lived for a while right on the border of Texas. I lived in Ciudad Juarez, which is the other half of El Paso.
Okay.
And so a lot of American stuff was relatively easy to get there. But I had a companion from Veracruz, and he showed up, and I was his very first companion. He didn't know anything about about Juarez or about the border, and we passed by a Taco Bell, and he's like, "Oh, I've always wanted to try American food," which.
Yep.
And Taco Bell is distinctly and intensely American. Like, there's very little Mexican about it. And like the concept of a hard shell taco, that was invented in California in the 50s. That was completely foreign to him. He was like, this is just a giant corn chip with taco meat in it. And I'm like, yep, that's what we call tacos up north. It was also nachos. They are an American thing rather than a Mexican thing.
Tortilla chips in general, right?
Tortilla chips are all over because you just chop up tortillas and you fry them in oil and eat them. But the idea of sitting down to your bowl of chips and your little cup of salsa, that's fairly American.
We went to Cafe Madrid last night, which if you live in the Salt Lake area, is a restaurant I highly recommend. Their tapas is excellent, but they have on the tapas Spanish tortilla. And I was like, I've always wondered what the relationship between tortilla and a tortilla. Because if you haven't had Spanish tortilla, it is very different.
No, it's like an omelet.
It's an omelet. Yeah. A potato omelet, but like more like a quiche. It's like served cold often or just warmed up.
Yeah.
And so I looked it up, and tortillas were named that by the conquistadors, but they go back 2,000 years.
Yeah, they do. Tortilla is the word just means like little sandwich.
It's cake,
it's diminutive of torta, which is usually sandwich. I wouldn't be surprised if it was also cake in Spain.
Okay.
But, the flatbread idea, what we think of as a Mexican tortilla, that's been around for millennia, and virtually every culture has a flatbread of some kind, right?
Yep.
It's just a very common thing. There's a really wonderful YouTube channel called Tribal People React. Have you ever watched that one?
No, I've watched Koreans try American candy.
So this is people from a tiny village somewhere in, I want to say Afghanistan, but it's that kind of area. It's Middle Eastern. And they will bring out bizarre American foods. Things that to us are very normal, like a giant donut covered with pink frosting and sprinkles. And then they'll have these people try it. And they're all very polite. Like, I don't think I've ever seen one where they hate the food. But the one where they introduced them to Mexican food, they were like, oh, this is just what we eat. This is the same thing we have all the time. There's roti and there's, the beef. And this is the first food you've given us that's spicy enough. It was very delightful to see that crossover.
Have you gone back to your mission, like the place that you were
I went back once.
Okay.
A few months after Dawn and I were married, they dedicated a new temple in my mission in Ciudad Juarez. And so one of my old buddies and I and Dawn, the three of us drove down and spent 3 or 4 days there kind of talking to our old friends and seeing the new building and all these other things. It was cool.
It's kind of a shame I've never been back to Korea. I've been to Taiwan multiple times. I've been to Japan. This is just that old thing that happens with me that I go where the books are selling, where I can go and do signings and things like that. And in Korea, we have a couple things translated, but nothing major. Yeah.
See, but now we can call it an intentionally blank expense. And the podcast will pay to send us both to Korea.
Man, all that podcast money that we have by not having any sponsorships.
Giant piles of podcast money.
Yeah.
We could go record an episode in wherever you served in Seoul or whatever.
Yes, the negative money.
Yeah.
Each podcast actually
costs us money. No, see, you'll sign like a bunch of pages on the flight, and that'll pay for the whole thing.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll do it, and we'll make fun of Ben for not being there.
Ha ha! Then I can take you down to Mexico.
From Korea?
We'll go straight from Korea to Mexico. I actually there was a couple who lived in Delicias, in that town I was talking about before.
Yeah.
She was Korean, he was Mexican. They met here at BYU and started dating before either of them spoke a language the other one could speak. And they ended up getting married and moving to Mexico.
I keep forgetting that you're supposed to call it South Korea in English. I've told you this, right? In Korea, there's a North Korea and there's a Korea.
Oh,
It's like there's a Virginia and a West Virginia. There's Bukhan and then there's Hanguk. And so in my head, there's not a country, South Korea, even though that is the proper term. It's actually what you, but in my, I've never called it South Korea because there's a North Korea, but there's not a South Korea. There's a North Korea and a Korea.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yep. Daehanminguk.
There you go.
How's that, Ben?